Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your Good Governance and Social Responsibility subject. This is still your instructor, Mr. Trip Anthony A. Ramos. And for this session, what we will be talking about is the comparison of business ethics and CSR. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this discussion by answering the following questions. Okay, so first one is, what do authors or experts say about business ethics and CSR? Because before this session, we were able already to discuss business ethics, and even we were able already to introduce what we call as the CSR. Okay, so according to Herbert Simon in Administrative Behavior in 1945, businesses have been affected by the growing public interest. Leaders are increasingly becoming involved with responsibilities toward the community beyond legal limits imposed on them. Hence, CSR is beyond regulatory and legal compliance. As we were able to discuss last time or in our previous session, we were able to say that as of the moment, there are different legalities or legal impositions when it comes to the businesses. Okay? In order for a certain community to make sure that the businesses will be doing their best in order to give back to a certain community wherein they are located. So as of the moment, and even before, according to Herbert Simon, that businesses already look things beyond legalities, meaning they are doing things not because they are being imposed on them, but they are doing these things simply because they are being part of their responsibilities. But just a caveat or a warning, not all of the businesses are doing this. There are still businesses that are actually doing this or doing some ethical standards or doing ethical things simply because legalities are being imposed on them. Okay, so if we're talking about CSR or the corporate social responsibility, we are talking about the things that we are doing ethically beyond regulations or beyond legal compliance. So simply put, if you are true to your word or if you are true when it comes to your dedication in order for you to give back to the community, you must take things beyond the regulations. You must be able to take things that it's not a merely compliance to what is expected from you. Rather, this is something that is part of your unstated obligation. So this will only be possible if your employers or all of the members of your community or your organizations or your institutions will also be sharing the same principle or the same thing. Because if, say, for example, one, two, or many of your members or many of the employees or even the managers will not be doing this with their whole heart, definitely things will not fall according to what is being planned. Okay, so now let's go to what Griffin said in 2000. So he said that business ethics is the basis of the practice of CSR, as we were able to discuss before or on our previous discussion. So business ethics will definitely ask for our conviction and our dedication in order for it to succeed. Okay, because without business ethics, without having this ethical standard, without having ethical measures, or without having any ethical principles, CSR will not actually be applied successfully. Why? Because without being ethical in the first place in your business context, of course, you will not be able to do CSR. Why? It's simply because you cannot give what you do not have. So simply put, if you would really want to practice CSR, you must first be able to practice what we call as the business ethics. All right. So let's go ahead and continue with our discussion. Okay. So another question, should a company become a corporate citizen without being ethical? So let's answer this question. Of course, the answer for this is no, because business ethics seeks to determine whether a particular behavior, a particular decision or action of an individual or organization is morally right or wrong. Okay, because you cannot be a corporate citizen without being ethical first. How can you be a corporate citizen if you won't be able to observe what is expected from you? Okay, and of course, it will actually be a hypocrisy if you will be doing things that is considered to be good without being good per se. Okay, so meaning if you would really want to practice, say for example, the corporate social responsibility, you must be first ethical within yourself. Just like what I've mentioned earlier, you cannot give what you didn't have. Of course, if you will be doing things that are related to ethics, or say for example, if you're expected to, of course, to do things which is considered to be ethically right, of course, you must be morally right first. Okay? Because your behavior, your decision, or your action definitely would reflect the things that you will be doing later on. Of course, if, say, for example, you will be practicing CSR without being ethically right or morally right, people will start criticizing you or even will be doubting your actions. Okay? So again, let me reiterate this. If you would really want to become a corporate citizen, you must start it within yourselves. Because if you will not be able to do so, definitely it can fall under hypocrisy. Okay? So now, the wisest thing to do, it seems, is to practice business ethics first and then engage in CSR activities. Because if you will not be successful in practicing business ethics, if you will not be successful in observing ethical principles, if you will not be successful in practicing ethical standards or ethical measures within the business context or within your organization, definitely CSR activities will be nonsense. Why? Simply because if people will be looking at you as someone, or the organization will be looked up into as an organization which are actually which is dedicated to doing ethically right things or giving back to the communities. Of course, they would really want to have this done by ethical persons. And you will be able to do so if you will be able to practice business ethics in the first place. Because again, if you will not be able to do so, you will not be able to give what you do not have. All right. So again, if you will be asked if should a company become a corporate citizen first without being ethical, the answer is no. You must be first ethically correct or ethically right, the morally right, before doing CSR activities. Always remember that. Okay. So now let's go ahead and answer the question, what are the similarities between CSR and business ethics? So take note of the following, and we will be discussing this one by one. So again, just like what we've mentioned earlier, both of them, business ethics and CSR, are beyond compliance with the law. Second, they're also tantamount to relativism. Later, we will be discussing relativism so that you will be able to grasp what we were talking about as of the moment. Okay? So third would be, both are born with universal values. So later on, we will also be discussing what are these universal values and what are these values that we will be fighting for as we go along the way in our organization. Okay? Fourth will be, both of the concepts are not utilitarian. So you will also be asking what is utilitarianism. Later, as we go along the way, we will be discussing the concept of utilitarianism. Of course, both of these also are pragmatic and practical. So since we're talking about business here, it is imperative for us to be pragmatic and practical. Later on, of course, just like what I've mentioned, we'll be scrutinizing the things indicated to this concept. Okay, next would be, both business ethics and CSR are beyond or are about firm conviction. As mentioned earlier, of course, if you will be doing business ethics, if you will be doing morally right things, it is expected that you will be doing this with conviction and dedication. And we'll be discussing this also later. So second to the last, both are beyond public relations. Of course, as we all know, if you will be doing things that is considered to be morally right, you must be doing this simply because you would want it, and you do not want a situation wherein you would do some things, or your employees will be doing things simply because of public relations. Okay? And lastly, both of them are centered on total human development. So just like what we've mentioned in our previous discussion, we are doing things, we are doing business ethics, we are doing CSR simply because we would want to uplift something. And we will be, I'll be reminding you later of what is that thing. Okay? So let's go ahead now and discuss this. All right. Okay, so now let's start with the legal compliance of of business ethics or CSR, the question, are both business ethics and CSR go beyond legal compliance? Of course. So just like what we've mentioned, CSR and ethical management coincide with the law and local regulation. Whether we like it or not, these things are still coinciding, meaning they're also interrelated with what is being prescribed by the law or what is being prescribed by the regulations of, say, for example, local government units. Okay, so of course, as we all know, the CSR and ethical management will start as something that is regulatory. But take note that CSR and ethical management has to be higher than legal compliance. If you will be really needing to, if you are true to your word, or if you are true to your dedication or conviction that you would want to practice this as something that goes beyond regulations or legalities, of course, you must instill into your employees, you must instill to all of the members of your organizations or institutions that ethical standards must go beyond legal compliance. That each of the member will be doing this as something that is already eminent to them. Because if they will be doing this simply because of legal compliance, the organization will not actually be able to do or to implement measures that are considered to be ethical in the first place. Okay, so again, both business ethics and CSR goes beyond legal compliance. Now, are both business ethics and CSR similar to relativism? So to answer the question first, no, ethics and CSR are not similar to situation ethics or ethical relativism. Again, if we're talking about relativism from the word relative, if we're talking about ethical relativism, it is something to do with, say, for example, in a certain community, a concept is allowed, but in another community, it is not allowed. So it is relative, meaning the rule or the ethical standard is actually dependent on what community we are talking about. So again, to answer this question, it is not like that for the terms ethics and CSR. It goes beyond that. Okay, because as just like what I mentioned, relativism professes that all beliefs are equally valid and the truth is relative. In this situation, we are telling that ethics and CSR is not similar to relativism. Okay, so again, according to Redfern and Crawford in 2004, so of course, things are depending on the situation or level of modernization, environment, and individual reference. So as we were able to mention earlier, if we're talking about CSR and business ethics, it is not similar to relativism because business ethics, of course, accepts moral values that are objective, permanent, and universal according to George in 1999. You are doing business ethics or you are doing ethical standards which are actually considered to be absolute. No ifs, no buts. Okay, so meaning we are accepting moral values, again, that are objective, that are permanent and universal, meaning in all times and on all forms, they are considered to be morally right. Those are the things that must be observed in a community or in an organization or in an institution if we will be really would want to practice this business ethics. All right, so let me go ahead and continue. Okay, so we were also able to say that both business ethics and CSR, okay, they are born with universal value. So just like what has been said, both business ethics and CSR deal with the human conduct, practices, decisions, way of doing things, including both external observable behaviors and internal unobservable intentions. And ethics and CSR deal with universal moral values. As I keep on telling you earlier, both business ethics and CSR, they are already born with universal values. Meaning, the values that are being upheld in a community, in an organization, or in an institution must be accepted in all forms and in all times. Because if, say, for example, it depends from one place into another, or if it depends from one situation into another, definitely that is not a universal value. And you will have dilemmas in dealing with this because just like what we mentioned, if it's relative, it will depend, and definitely there would be exceptions. And we do not want to be like that. We would want rules, we would want regulations that are considered to be universal. in simpler terms, we would want these moral values as something that are accepted by all, or accepted at all times. Okay? So again, in other words, there is only one universal language for all business practitioners and professionals everywhere: the true, the just, the fair, and the good. Meaning, if you will be giving premium into the things, or into ethical standards or measures in terms of business ethics and CSR, these are the only things that you would want to consider. Okay, again, if it's the truth, definitely you must go with that. Okay, because the truth, it is not relative, it is universal. There is only one truth behind things. Okay. Second, it must be just. When you say just, you're actually being, it's similar to being fair, and giving the equal footing to each and every one. So again, the just and the fair seems to be similar. Okay, and also you must be doing this for the good. Okay, so again, those are universal language for all businesses and business practitioners and professionals. If you will be implementing things, the things that you must be considered, again, it must be the truth, being just, being fair, and being good. Okay, so let me go ahead and continue. So are both business ethics and CSR utilitarian? So let's first discuss what is utilitarianism. So utilitarianism focuses on the results of an action rather than the motive behind action. Okay, so simply put, ethics is not utilitarian. So it may happen that when the utilitarian principle is applied, several basic rights and freedom of others are restricted or disregarded. And as we were able to discuss last meeting, or last session, we know that the most important thing in talking about ethics is upholding the what we call as the human dignity. We must treat each and every member of our organization. We must treat each and every employee, each and every manager as something that is actually upholding, or having this what we call as the human dignity, because that's the most important thing if we're talking about business ethics, or if we're talking about ethics. And if we're talking about ethics, we do not want to disregard any freedom or any basic rights of each member. Okay, because each of the dignity of that member, of those members, definitely they are considered or deemed to be important, and it must not be disregarded. Okay, so again, business and the government are duty bound to solemnly respect human dignity and basic rights in all forms and at all times. This must be upheld. Okay, and human dignity, as we mentioned earlier, and even in our previous discussion, it's the most central issue in terms of ethical decision making, whether you like it or not. Okay, again, let me repeat that. If we're talking about business, if we're talking about organization, they are duty bound to solemnly respect human dignity and basic rights. We would want that each and every one will be accepted. They will be given importance simply because they are possessing what we call as dignity. All right. So let me go ahead and continue. So are both business ethics and CSR pragmatic and practical? So take note, everyone, that if we're talking about being pragmatic and practical, so first, let's go ahead and discuss what is pragmatic. So according to Merriam-Webster dictionary, being pragmatic is when you deal things sensibly and realistically in a way that is based on practical rather than theoretical considerations. Meaning, you would want not only to actually learn things theoretically, but also apply this. Because again, if you would really want to be successful in implementing this business ethics and CSR, you would want to have the correct policy and for it to be applied. You would want to have this put into practice rather than just being talked about by your members. Because if you will not be able to turn this theories, if you will not be able to turn this practical, this measurements or even these principles into practice, it is nonsense. Okay. Again, business ethics and CSR, they are concerned with orthodoxy, which is the correct policy, and orthopractice, which we call as the best practice. Okay. Since they do not end in memorized codes and principles, take note that business ethics and CSR are practical, pragmatic, and alive. Again, if you will be summarizing this, business ethics and CSR would want to have these ethical theories or ethical measurements or ethical standards to be put into action. All right. So let's go ahead and continue. So are both business ethics and CSR about firm conviction? Definitely, the answer is yes. Because business ethics and CSR, actually, this involve not about your feelings, but your ethical standards and not just your emotions. You would want to have this corporate involvement, something to do with your ethical theories or ethical standards, okay, and not merely because of an emotion. So on the reverse, ethics is a fixed standard. Remember this. Again, ethics is a fixed standard. These are objective, permanent, and grounded on the strongest convictions about what is right and what is wrong. It is not relative. You are doing this simply because the rule is absolute. So whether you do the right thing or you do not do the right thing. Okay. So let's continue. Do business ethics and CSR go beyond public relations and profitability? It might happen as a consequence of practicing social responsibility and ethical management that sales go up because the company projects an angelic image. But take note that we must go beyond this. Because if you are true to your word and if you are true to your conviction, you are doing things ethically simply because you are treating this as something that is right. Okay, so again, you practice ethics because it is your philosophy of management. You benchmark CSR because it is the right thing to do and not because of that angelic image that you would want to project for your company. And that is according to Maximiano in 2005. Okay, and are both business ethics and CSR centered on total human development? The answer would be, of course, it's yes, because again, the total development of the human person embraces the physical, the spiritual, material, and the immaterial, and even the financial and moral aspects of your life. And economic development itself is not an end; it is a means to an end. And the end is the total welfare of man. That is, of course, for the whole human person. You are doing business, you are doing ethics, you are doing CSR simply because of the welfare of man. And that's it for our discussion about the comparison of business ethics and CSR. And let me grab the opportunity to thank each and every one of you who attended our session. And I hope to see you all on our succeeding ones. If you still have any clarifications or questions, just leave your questions or your queries under the comment box. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next session.